Um, Sue, thank you so much. I appreciate you putting this together. And yes, we acknowledge we're being recorded. I think the only thing I have on this is just kind of what's next, right? Are we good with that?
Think so.
I mean, it's,
Figure out what we need to do.
yeah, there's some format, 1,000 feet, there's footnotes to add, some formatting, obviously make sure our totals jive throughout the different pages and documents. And I think the recommendations we're gonna kind of let sit. We have a work group that we're gonna be doing this spring on updating and revising and making supplemental recommendations, so we can reference that in the text under maybe in the lead in to the recommendations, the narrative version of the recommendations, procedural recommendations, which in my printout are on page 12. Just to have mentioned that, as opposed to the whole thing being a recommendation. I think what I was hoping to do, Sue, confirm your idea of sorting $1 million projects by highest to lowest. Sounds good to me. I think that was unanimous. And the only other thing would be, we'll address any questions you guys have. The only other item will be to, if requests that were not advanced by town admin are not in the appendix A due to the way the database works, then we'll interleave those into the respective department. We'll adjust the total of the total of the FY25 requests to include those, and then we'll reflect that on this page 2 with the number of requests, the total amount, and then what we are recommending. And the reason for that is it demonstrates in the footnotes, it indicates that town manager, town administration may have removed these out of during the process of capital review for the year. But it also reflects accurately the number of requests we reviewed and other information. So that's important to put in there. Any questions on that particular topic, and then questions from anyone in general?
So sorry that you were just saying, I'm looking on page 2 right now. So we have 86 requests for 113 million. You're saying we up that to the total number of requests that we reviewed?
I believe that the 86 is correct. So
Okay.
Peter has the a copy of the final
1/8/24.
Yeah, the final of our recommendation, our final preliminary recommendation that was submitted. The preliminary was submitted to the select board with some unresolved requests. Those requests we resolved at our last meeting. Peter and Sue have a copy, and I believe Sue incorporated that information in the number of requests and perhaps the dollar number. I don't have it fresh in my mind. Peter, do you have what the total is on that?
113 million.3.
Yeah, so, and then the request that we advanced 1.29?
1.029, yeah, or 102.
102.9, sorry.
Yep.
So I believe that information, Sue, is already incorporated. Where we would want to incorporate is if it's not already in there, is in the appendix A.
Gotcha, where it has the individual requests.
Yeah, and the reason, and Sue, I may just be talking here about information that isn't relevant, but my understanding in past years is that if, depending on how it's done in the database, a request that is kind of reversed, it's taken out of, it's quote unquote canceled by town manager, it's not reflected in the appendix A because it's not showing up in a report. So if that's the case, all I'm saying is we'll do that manually at our end.
I have to double check. I think there's a way that if I canceled it, I can still show that status and we can hide it. But if we moved it out to FY26, no, we're not going to be able to pick that.
Right. So we'll do a double check on our end to make sure that the appendix A list reflects the document that I was just referring to, which is our preliminary up down. I will distribute an email version in PDF of that document to both Peter and Howard, so they have it. Peter has the paper version, hard copy here now.
And we do have the airport joining.
Okay, and airport's running. And then the same type of a thing would carry over to, let me just double check my. I think for consistency of numbers, I don't recall thankfully whether Appendix B is a summary of only those that we recommended, or if it includes those we didn't recommend, because it's a by funding source. So I don't believe we will need to do that step we were just discussing with respect to Appendix A in Appendix B. Make sense?
Okay, because it's only relevant to the funding source.
Yeah,
And we're
I
not
don't
gonna
think we-
consider
yes.
requests that we didn't move forward in
Yeah.
terms of funding sources.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think that we don't need to do that in the Appendix B.
So appendix A, everything that we looked at, appendix B, only what we move forward.
Yeah, yeah. And then questions from you guys. I mean, there may be a few schedule, content, whatever it is.
Howard, I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, first of all, I opened the document on my iPad, but I didn't notice if it was in a Word document that was openable in Word. Was it? Is it?
It's a Word document.
Okay, great. The second question is I clearly have no idea step by step of what to do here. And I think it would be really helpful if somebody could outline and just send me a note of what to do step by step so I can do it, because I have all those things that you just talked about. I would have no idea that they were necessary to do.
Sure. Where we are at this point, Howard, is the only thing you need to do is compile footnotes, distribute them to Peter and myself through Sue. So we're not deliberating, just to be safe with open meeting law. And we can comment back through Sue on whether we, make a recommendation on the footnotes you would include in the report after leafing through the report and seeing the content of footnotes on the different pages. So then you can review current fiscal year request footnotes, and you'll see where different types of footnotes get plugged into the report. And you would just make you could take your spreadsheet of notes, I believe it's a spreadsheet, or whatever it is, and you can sort them, and you could say, page 3 footnotes, page 4 footnotes, appendix A footnotes, appendix B footnotes. And that would be the extent of what you need to do at this point. The next step will be that you and Peter decide who puts them in the report. And then we print up a PDF version as a draft, and we circulate it through Sue to the membership. So it's pretty simple. This has been formatted so that the process has been designed and formatted so that the only items that need to be addressed are importing the summary tables into the narrative body of the report, formatting appendix A, B, and C. And of course, appendix C is something Sue provides and finance department provides. And the only other item that we need to be brought forward from finance is the here, Howard, I meant to keep it really simple, so it sounded even easier than it is, but the only other thing that needs to be done, and it's something Sue can do and provide, because it needs to come through their office and the tax assessors, is the effect of borrowings, capital, and debt exclusion in a table that shows up on page 7, projected cost of borrowing impacts. So that's something you, Howard, won't need to address, Peter, won't need to address, other than when it's provided to make sure that it fits into the report in the proper sequence and formatting.
Great. That's a lot of words. I have no idea so let me tell you what I think I'm going to do. So first of all, you have a table that you want inputted into the beginning of the document. Where is that table?
So what I need from you, please, is to take your footnotes. Put them in
No,
a
let me-
list.
Well, I'm going through what you just said, Pete.
Yeah.
Stuart. So you said that a table needs to be imported.
No.
What table?
No. I was suggesting a workflow process for you to address what needs to be addressed, which are the footnotes. And
I understand that, but you just gave a list of things that needed to be done. That was in your list. So if you don't want me to import any tables, then I'm not going to ask what table it is. Now I'm going to go through my notes and the list of footnotes and create a separate document that will propose rather than putting them into the document.
Right, so if you simply provide your footnotes in a list form and break it down, categorize them by which page of the report you'd like to see them in, or you would recommend, based upon your review of last year's report, to understand context, then Peter and I can take a quick look at them, comment, we can resort or shuffle if we need to, and then you guys can decide who's gonna put them into the report. The
Okay,
table
good.
work is all done with one exception. So do you have any questions on that part?
No, I think that's to the extent I can do it, I'll do it.
Okay,
And so I just, before we move on from those footnotes, so most of the footnotes, and Howard, correct me if I'm wrong, but are specific to individual requests.
yeah,
Yes.
Those footnotes would be captured in the Schedule A.
it will depend. So if the 100-foot shot on that is that if a footnote relates to a particular request,
Which most of them do.
other than its funding source, it will go into appendix A. If a footnote relates to a particular request's funding source,
Schedule B.
it will go into appendix B.
Gotcha, yeah, appendix B. Gotcha. We're not expecting a lot of footnotes, and maybe I misheard you, but
Yeah,
to be inserted throughout this 16-page report. Okay,
yeah, I don't anticipate there's many, like, for instance, one example would be the the coastal resilience study. There was some discussion on a specific recommendation.
Mhm.
That would become a footnote in appendix A. And Howard may not have actually, I don't believe he was here to capture that, but it's something I recall. So when I get the list, I'll insert that in the list to go into appendix A.
Right.
And I'll provide the footnote.
but we won't have any footnotes in the 16-page Word document.
Other than the standard ones under the,
I put it up on the screen if it helps for everyone.
thank you, because I was sitting here wondering
Can we put
what
that
my computer was
on the
doing.
big one? Gotcha. Okay, just want to make sure that was clear and I had that right. So the majority, if not all of the footnotes that we've been tracking and Howard primarily, thank you, Howard, will be relevant to the Schedule A and the Schedule B, or Exhibit A and Exhibit B.
Yes,
Gotcha,
with,
okay.
with minor exception, which I'll get to in just a second. Sue, I'm sorry, I'm having problems relocating this to the big screen.
You just drag it over, you have a second monitor.
Yeah, it's not giving me
Nope.
that opportunity with the,
Is it pinned or something?
with the spreadsheet. Let me see if I can minimize the,
Maybe because I'm screen sharing.
I think if no, stay co-host, get that off. One second.
Howard's given us.
I see,
I just sent you a shared request for remote control.
We
Okay.
should be able to move the window.
Did you get that?
Oh, so now you can drag it, is what you're saying.
I'm not sure. Okay, yeah,
Okay,
there
now-
we go.
now I see yours.
Does she remote control that?
Yeah, so that was on her screen, but now I can't.
Regardless, your window should
I
still.
think you need to reduce hers and leave yours, because
You are controlling that.
So
This is,
So what are you trying to move over there?
well, this one,
that was.
do I think do you have an Excel and a Word open?
I don't think you have the Zoom screen pulled up. I think you're just operating. I'm clicking this thing.
Yeah, we're seeing all of Sue's.
I don't.
Sue, I'm gonna ask, please stop screen sharing because we're seeing your emails. Okay, not that there's anything there, but just, and then if you will open the Word document and only screen share that one.
That is on the screen shared. It must have been when you took control, not to blame you, but it must do something.
Oh, okay, because I thought I was seeing the I thought I saw the report on the. Because I don't have the report opened, but I saw it.
Right, but when I only show that particular screen, so I don't know what happened.
Oh, that's good to know that, so when. I co-shared, I mean, this is just process with respect to Zoom, when I co-shared with you, actually everything on your screen shows up. Just a footnote for all of us to understand that happens. So I moved the Zoom window to the large screen. If you can screen share the Word report again. We'll see it on the big screen so Peter can see it too. And we'll resume our discussion.
Okay, does that work?
Yeah,
Perfect. And if you could zoom in on the page to the left, general fund and enterprise accounts total. So these footnotes are going to change very little, and on these footnotes within the narrative body of the report.
yeah, we'll assume that we don't have much to do on those
Yeah,
footnotes, right?
the only one, so this specific one, and it's been highlighted, so that was Sue, is indicating that there's a dollar change there,
Mhm.
or she may have already made it, because I don't have it in front of me, what the prior year was.
Can I ask one question? Why didn't, if there's $500,000 of ambulance reserve, when they made the request for the ambulance, why didn't they tell us that there was a reserve?
I will tell you that I don't actually remember that discussion.
I do.
You do, and the ambulance reserve fund wasn't brought up?
No, and I have to tell you, I have a really bad memory, but I would remember that.
Okay, and I think go ahead, Sue.
In terms of the chief, one, this is his first time going through capital, and typically the funding decisions for the funding sources are typically done by finance and town admin, so he may
No, I
not.
was just saying, he should have told us that, because that might have impacted, let's say, in another circumstance, there was a reserve to pay for something. Someone might have voted for it because it was only a little bit to pay for, not the whole load.
Yeah, and I think we can redouble our efforts as a committee because I don't, we've had for so many years regular return members, or we would have one new member coming in. So have these sources of funding that are kind of baked into the cake become secondary, and during the department head level discussion, because they're not brought up until the funding resources are established. So it's a good point, Howard, and I will try to be better.
Yeah. The second thing is like the airport, there are federal grants and state grants that are in your sources of funds. And I don't see any of them here, but maybe I'm not looking at the right thing.
So those will be footnoted as AIP, and that's how we address it, is by giving the typical percentage of what the AIP is, which is 90%, 5%, and then that airport has 5%. And that
That's
would
great.
be under.
I understand what you're saying, but in this particular schedule, I'm just looking at this schedule because you
Yep.
showed it to me. Why wouldn't the source be listed in the various in one of those schedules?
So it is actually, it's just, this has to be reformatted, so this information all shows on one page. So we're looking now at enterprise accounts. If you look at borrowings, footnotes 1 and 2. So will you scroll to the next page? Oh, it's there. I'm sorry, on my printout, it's on the next
AIP
page.
grant funding.
Yeah,
AIP grant funding,
right.
sought to pay up to 90% costs, Massport 5%.
But some of the studies that we were talking about for like coastal zoning and stuff like that, there's grants available. And I hope I have it in my notes that there are grants that we can apply for, or grants that we're going to get. And then if Peter, maybe you have that if I don't.
Right, so where that'll show up Howard, is in the appendix B footnotes
Yes.
on a per request basis. And one of the items that's on my list as part of our finalizing footnotes is we will ask Sue to provide, it's a relatively short list of any requests that have or anticipated to have grant funding and how much they are. And then if we're
Well-
missing something in our footnotes, we will have them.
If I can remember at the time when I'm writing this, some things we approved because it would attract grant money, not that it already had grant money.
Right.
That gets difficult, I mean, to identify anything that's potential for a grant versus not having a grant in place, right?
Yeah, and I want to rephrase my comment because I saw Sue shake her head no. When I say potential, I'm not saying like someone, I want to clarify, I'm not suggesting a request that a department head may seek funding on or has identified funding but hasn't pursued. When I say potential, I'm referring to it is not signed in blood, but it is anticipated. And then anything that is signed in blood, which is like the AIP, we would include
Yeah.
by matter of course.
Let me try this one more time because I do understand what you said, but I just want to make sure. There were some things that we approved because there was the prospect of attracting federal funding like that, those initiatives for the goodness of the world. And we thought that if we approved those, that we would attract funding for them.
Sorry, Howard, I just really enjoyed how you phrased that.
Well, I'm a
Yes,
private sector person. I'm sorry.
no, like I said, I was not being facetious. Yes, I think to the extent we can recall them, I don't think there are more than a few, and I don't have them on the tip of my tongue, but from my notes, I would look at them, and I think that there's look, Sue's gonna be aware from the finance department, I don't wanna put this on Sue. I presume will be aware of, oh, this has a grant funding associated, or it has estate funding, but there aren't many of them. I think, I mean, I
Okay,
think it
I
might be
agree with you.
three.
I was going to say 3, maybe.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
And I
Let
mean,
me
it
see
would
if I
probably
can
be,
find that.
well, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, it would probably be best to have it centralized from Sue, Sue,
yeah.
you know, to say this is the list of the ones that have it, because we can.
Does she have to do
keep
everything?
this for, the last 3 months, all we want, but, I mean, also seems prudent that it would be something that would be even categorically selected. Yeah, I mean, it isn't right now, but in the future, it might not be bad if we ever have a chance to revamp what the criteria is.
Yeah.
So it's easy enough to pull a report of all of them that say, only
Okay.
requests that have a, component.
Right, so the database, I mean, in the multiverse ideal world,
In theory.
there would be, the grant funding would go in a field that would show up in the individual request, in the information flow. And we could also print a report that says particular requests and the information on potential grant funding.
Hmm.
We're not there.
Nope.
I'm gonna suggest that we individually try and identify these things. And I'm gonna ask Sue to please speak, because I see her so patiently waving her hand.
This is not a word that goes with me. So I would agree with you. Last year was a different story. If I hadn't already updated this, last year we had identified state revenue and federal revenue. And
Right.
right up here, it was the town pier improvement already had an approved grant. I think of $1 million if I recall. And the big path had already those were set sources. This year, I didn't have any of my notes that were specific.
Sue, you're
Just to
breaking
interrupt you for
up.
a second. Yeah, I thought it was me. I'm on the ferry, so I don't know how long the internet's going to be decent.
Yeah, Sue, go ahead, Howard.
Sue, how come everybody dumps on Sue that she has to do everything? That's a
Well, Howard, I see you're trying to
That's
get
a-
points here, but we're talking about free requests.
that's a joke, but because I know what. But the
I'm teasing.
Yeah. So I think let's look through our notes and let's see if we can find anything. What question I had for Sue was, you know how in the Rory there was a brief discussion that each department had provided about stuff. I didn't track it because I didn't open your document thoroughly. Is some of that text included in the document that you prepared?
No, this document, yesterday.
The appendix A, Howard, will have the project description. It will not have supplemental comments.
Okay, is
Unless,
that
Sue,
where,
can you print the supplemental comments in the appendix A as a selection,
I mean, do you want them as the
as a
question?
column?
You didn't do them last year, so do you want them?
No,
I mean,
not for the report, Howard, just for our initial deliberation. Look, I think, I'm gonna go back to what Howard said, which is something I said earlier. Let's just take a look at our own notes.
Mm.
There's a few of these. Sue, I'm not suggesting Sue needs to turn over every stone to find these. It's just, if you look at the list and something strikes you,
Okay,
having been involved with inputting these, great, but I don't think there's anything like that.
When we review
okay,
resources with Libby, we typically are aware of another.
Yeah.
fund That time, and we note it because we also have to note it, especially if it's a debt exclusion, we can note it in the article. And none of these projects had any, concrete, sources of grants.
yeah,
Only AIP, and which is not included
Right,
under the
right.
umbrella of what you just said, because you factored it in, and then the ground penetrating radar, the historic study, which also that amount of money doesn't factor in because it's exclusive of the request. Yeah,
Right.
so there might have been one other one that I think was somewhere along those lines.
okay. And then Sue, the other question is do you, what was I gonna say, with regard to the things that are in this warrant for this, is it November what's the next meeting?
Okay.
So that's the annual one. Okay, so there was, the ones that were like for the solid waste, those are gonna be in the annual one or in the interim one?
Anything that you guys just approved, the process we went through in the past couple weeks with the Rorys and putting down the good.
Okay,
They're all like 25.
I missed that too. I think Howard might have too. It's basically FY 25 requests that are not prior supplemental special meeting
Right, annual.
for
town-
2 items. Okay. Howard, this meeting is about building your confidence with the footnotes. So any questions you have, because really that's what is the majority of what's next.
okay. Well, let me give it a shot and I'll call you guys if I do that.
And I just want to clarify, we had this discussion at the onset. And I appreciate the fact that you're very thorough and comprehensive, Howard, and I mean that. But you've kind of gone through the process, you'll have the prior year report to refer to. And just get a flavor of those footnotes, and that's the level of expectation that anyone can reasonably look for. But maybe not expect, but at least look for, so that can kind of give you a sense of how detailed to be. There's nothing that suggests you
Okay.
can't be more detailed if you're comfortable with it. It's just, I don't want you, feeling like you got a slave over this.
I got you. Do I have a copy of last year's report inside the website?
I can re-email it to you. I do think I sent.
You said it a long time ago, but I don't know where it is.
Yeah, if
that
you
would be
could
helpful.
include me on that too, that'd be awesome.
And Sue, can I ask, just while I'm thinking about it, can you send a copy to Florencia, because it wasn't posted to the website? The FY 24. And then that way it'll be available if, we need it for some reason. Okay. Other questions? Before we kind of talk about schedule.
I don't have any other,
Well, you
no, I
guys,
don't have questions.
body of, sorry, I gotta get back to my screen. There it is. Are you planning to update any of the narrative?
Anyone, I'm sorry?
I'm losing my voice. Any of the narrative, will this, any of,
I was gonna get to that one. No, you're good. Yeah, I did say schedule, but so my thoughts on the narrative is basically, the statement of procedures is pretty well established. We might want to tweak some dates. We might want to add under statement of procedures that this spring And in Springs Forward, we'll be looking at reviewing recommendations and adjusting them for the following year or something to that effect. On the recommendations themselves, the procedural recommendations, a lot of those are fairly substantive. They've all been reviewed by the select board and adopted for a couple or more years running. So I'm comfortable leaving them as they are, subject to the understanding that we're gonna be reviewing our procedural recommendations within the next few months. So that we didn't take that opportunity, I think, for a variety of reasons. One, well, without getting into the reasons, I think we want to take the opportunity and look at this spring, the Rory, the database, what goes into the Rorys, the different discussions we had about the criterion, one segment of discussion, and the second, more relevant to what we're talking about today, are the procedural recommendations. So
Right.
I'm comfortable leaving, subject to updating FY years. I'm comfortable leaving the recommendations as they are. I'm happy to take feedback once you guys review them. The problem is we're gonna run into a wall with respect to schedule. Because schedule is really what ideally we would, if necessary, meet Tuesday as a work group. With the understanding, not you, Sue?
We're not actually gonna be able to do Tuesday. It would have had to been posted by 1 o'clock today because of the Monday holiday. I double checked.
Oh, okay, yeah, because the 48 hours notice. So the schedule driving us is whether we actually need to meet or we can just do this via email through Sue. And I want to nail that down just a little bit more before we, in a moment. Just exactly what that means. And the concept of materially modifying recommendations without an opportunity to meet, go through them, maybe at least once, and then present them to the membership with time for them to go through them before we finalize the report. I'm a little uncomfortable that we don't have the time for that. So I'm thinking, please read through the recommendations with the understanding these have been adopted by the select board in the past, as recently as last year. And we can do FY reference updates. And if anything jumps out as you is really something that needs to be modified, we can discuss it, but otherwise I think we just need to move forward with them as they are.
So what's the schedule?
So the schedule is gonna be, Howard, will drive footnotes. So you're coming back this evening, you're busy, and if you could get those to us, say Saturday, we could all, Sue, is it too much of an imposition, understanding that this is a one-off type of a thing for Howard, if he can do it by Saturday or on Saturday, if he were to email you his footnote notes and you could forward them to Peter and I?
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, I don't want to just presume that. And then Peter and I would turn those around. Can you do it this weekend?
Yeah, I could probably get done by the end of the weekend.
And then Monday, we would anticipate, we'd have those to Sue by Monday morning. She could forward them back to Howard. And they need to be put into the report. And then the report basically needs the projected taxpayer costs that Sue will provide. And the appendix C, which were current year requests that have funding in process. And then it can go to the membership, ideally Tuesday evening, for them to review. And we'll get together for our regular meeting Thursday. Any last minute details can be resolved, input from the regular membership. And we can incorporate that in the report, turn it into a PDF, interleave the appendices, and send it on to the select. I'll send it on to the select board.
Okay, so you're thinking do the appendices after next Thursday's meeting?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't include that. If you can send us the appendix A and B from. You're talking about appendix C?
I don't know which one I haven't even had a chance to look at the appendices yet. I was concentrating.
Okay, so appendix A and B are programmatically created from Plum, which you know, but Howard may not know and Peter may not remember. So those I would ask that you send along as soon as possible. And I'm gonna presume at this point, Peter, you will be the one who reviews appendix A to determine of the requests that have been put to out years, that those are interleaved if Sue can't produce a version of it from the database. So for instance,
Confirm that we include the ones that we put out years in appendix A.
yeah, so for instance, EV charging stations.
Yeah. We pushed it out.
You might have to pull that, you might have to go in, copy that information.
Yeah.
The alphanumeric code, the
Yeah,
description,
I can do that.
blah, blah, blah.
As long as it's, yeah, as long as
Yeah,
I
and
understood
there's,
exactly what I need to do, but yeah.
I think
6 of them,
there's
8 of them.
5 or 8 of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably closer to 6 or 8.
So you're saying if she can't pull an appendix A that includes those, I need to manually go in and add them?
Yeah.
That's no problem.
And then Howard will be dealing with the footnotes. Those will ideally come together Monday morning in Sue's email box to be forwarded to the other members of this work group. And for a final review, I can review the report, the narrative body. Why don't I take that off your plate? And if I've got any modifications, I'll send them into Sue. And we, basically Howard's doing footnotes, Peter's doing the appendix A. And Peter, if you can take a look at the report that Sue sent to make sure that things are breaking on the page.
Yeah, so I would love to have the first and last crack at just formatting the report.
Yeah.
After all the information is in there is gonna be final more or less. And so any, the page number stuff, all that stuff, spacing, make sure that that's not almost a full blank page. I'm happy to do all that and get it, put a bow on it, looking all nice and pretty.
So ideally, that would happen for Tuesday in order for Wednesday to be distributed to the membership. Because I don't anticipate after our regular meeting on Thursday that during the course of our Thursday meeting or after as a result of it, that there's gonna be changes that change the formatting. And if there's a change,
Right.
for instance, to a footnote, it'll be minor information. It's not gonna be a rewrite of the footnotes. I don't think members are gonna chime in to that extent. They're relying on us for those.
And we'll just all need to make sure that whoever is making any changes, that they're all working off of a most recent version.
I think,
So I don't make changes and then it goes, then
yeah,
somebody else who makes changes to a previous one, then my changes aren't captured and then we're, looking at 3 or 4 different versions. So that's just kind of us all staying on the same
yeah, and I think
communication.
that probably the best way to do that would be to preempt it happening, and that would mean that, say, as of a certain point, Peter, you say, hey, I'm the change master. So, send us an email and we know, and in the meantime, any changes that we're proposing are going through Sue to the rest of the group. We determine that we have consensus, and then they'll all be in an email thread that we can distill down for Peter to put into the report.
So Howard's on footnotes. I'm on appendix A if need be, because Sue can't.
Right, and you'll know that when you get it.
And then also Sue, once the Word document is as tightened up as it, can get with updated information, let me know, and then I'll go in and start to format and font size and margins and everything else.
Okay, so I'm gonna say that as I'm scrolling through this. Right now, I started to work on this thing. However, we may have to mark this as estimated because the tax rate is not set at this moment. So these numbers possibly can change. Obviously, this is last year's, but I started working on this morning. That and appendix B, the funding sources, I have to go into Plum and put all the funding sources, mark them all, although I think most of them are done.
Okay.
So,
And
so I'm thinking, Peter, I mean, if you're waiting on, this is really the only major one you'd be waiting on me for the body of.
Okay, and I don't think anything on that change is gonna change substantially enough that it's gonna push anything, into a new page or anything like that, so I can work with that, so. If you think for the most part, everything is substantially, where it's gonna be, page size, all that, I can, run through this in a half hour and just, gussy it up.
These into the, I'm so sorry, it's because I'm losing my voice.
Hmm.
Dollar amount, I just have to resort that. It's not a sort, I have to fix it.
Just curious too, so all of these tables, are you pulling these from Excel sheets and then just copying and pasting them, or are they just dynamic charts in Word?
So I am not, as I said in my email, great at Word. Last year I tried to do that and I created the tables in Excel, but then I ended up just taking the tables that are already here. You can see, you can actually edit them. So I just go in and write over them because
So you're just manually doing it in Word? Gotcha, okay, I was just curious on the process on your end.
It's a lot easier on the formatting. The data part of it is a little more difficult, but
Yeah, I rather had kept the integrity of the formatting, so I just type over.
yeah, that was always the struggle with mine, and the bigger one is the next page, which is. Cause it's so finicky with, those, if you're inputting the data into an existing the Word file, much easier than. Having it be a live active link from Excel, it was always a nightmare for years.
Well, so Sue, I'll wait for your, shoot me an email with whatever kind of your temporary final version is. If you're waiting on that page, that's all highlighted, so be it. And then I'll start to work through it.
Yeah, okay, it might not get much more improvement before the weekend because I'm originally scheduled to take tomorrow off and I have finance committee at 4:00 tonight.
Yeah, I mean, no rush, just, I'll just, wait for that to come through.
Yeah, and just on the insight on that, I think Peter, just with what's here. You actually could go through and format the document you have.
Yeah,
And just this one page would be the one. Because the footnotes, if they change, it's gonna
about
be
the same size.
It's gonna be a
And even if
tiny
you resort
change,
that
yeah.
one table, it's gonna be the same amount of lines.
Yeah, because I don't think Howard's gonna be adding footnotes to the narrative body. Cause these are very general footnotes. The only one that's gonna change is the one Sue has up on the screen, which he's highlighted.
Yeah.
And then in the other ones, if there's actually a fiscal year reference, it will literally be a 2-digit change. So this portion of the report can be perhaps put to bed.
Tightened up.
And then the numerical masking to match the appendix. I think it does now, doesn't it, Sue? I think the numerical, can you tell me with the number of digits on that pre and post decimal point?
On this,
Yeah,
1, 3, and 2 posts.
okay, so this matches the same format. Just that believe it or not, I've been in finance committee meetings, and someone said, well, it would be easier if these numerical formats were exactly the same.
Which I agree.
I agree,
Yeah,
but
I
when you're
get
presenting,
hung up on stuff like that when I'm reading through it. I'm like, oh, some of these have 1 decimal, some of these have 2, and
and that's when
some of them don't have a 0 before the decimal, and some of them do.
Yeah, and that's what spurred the change to actually doing a comprehensive report like this, because we were turning it in and it wasn't.
Okay, so I'll work on what we have here. And I'll probably just send it back out to I'll just reply to the email where you sent it to us, and I'll put my name and an updated date on it, so we know that that's, the most recent version.
That would be
But
great.
isn't Sue, aren't you making changes before he wants to do that? So you
No.
guys don't get double duty?
What we were saying was,
I didn't hear that.
the only thing I have, the only thing is that I have to change on this are not gonna affect the format.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And if it does, as long as I have Final Cut, I can just go back in and,
Yeah.
the majority of it will be done, and I can just rejigger what I need to.
I'm on a schedule the rest of today, so we probably not gonna be able to do
Yeah,
much.
nope, no worries.
And then Peter, I'll redline and send to Sue the narrative.
Okay.
So I'll do that Saturday morning. And then, so I'm planning on having, I think, just in fairness to you, I'm not expecting you're sitting around waiting for us to email you. I'm gonna plan on having my red lines to you by Saturday at 5. And then if Howard can do that with the footnotes, at least the first draft, that'd be great. If not, leave it to him to get them to you. And then that way you know, kind of know when it's coming in.
Okay, that'd be great.
And then when you can forward it, go ahead and forward them. So Peter's got format. He's gonna be able to deal with most of it now. Sue's got two tables. One is within the narrative body. And the other is the appendix C. The appendix C is purely gonna be at our end formatting related, so it can be towards the tail end. It doesn't need to be, we don't, it's an appendix. It can be finalize the formatting and turn it into a PDF and brought into the document, right before it goes to the general membership. We can all have an opportunity to review it as a virgin file at that point. And before that, Howard's gonna work on the footnotes, and please just categorize by if there's a particular page within the report that Sue sent, or if not, which particular appendix, A or B. And then we can all jump in, make a couple comments, finalize those through Sue. Those end up on Peter's inbox to go into appendix A or B. And the whole thing gets printed out as a PDF. Having this in the database is tremendously helpful, and obviously Sue's being on top of it and doing the legwork, the lifting that has to do with the body tables too. So I think that's pretty much it. Unless someone has some discomfort other than general.
I do, but I don't want to talk about it right now. Let me just try to do it.
But as long as it doesn't relate to anything you've eaten recently, we can talk about it. You're breaking up.
It has to do only with this.
You're frozen on a
Thanks
really
to
good,
log out.
you're frozen on a really good smile, Howard. Okay, guys, thanks so
All
much,
right.
Sue, thank
Great.
you. And we'll talk to you via email.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, guys. So.